We have members of parliament. We have the mayor of Belize City and members of the opposition. We have a senator to do a fireside chat with us. This is an initiative from our Civic Fellowship Academy, and I'd like to share with you guys a little bit about what we do. So this was the brainchild of myself and Aria Lightfoot, where we saw the need for civic education in Belize, and we were particularly interested in young people. So over the pandemic, we had a Zoom call, and the Zoom calls are monthly, and it happens for 9 months. We've called the program Birth of a Citizen. Of course, 9 months. And after the 9-month period, these fellows, as we call them, were supposed to do civic programs. So it ranged from neighborhood cleanups, planting trees, getting into voting drives, starting youth groups, a number of different initiatives. And out of that, we developed a yearbook for them, and it goes through a lot of the information that they learned over the period of the 9 months. So they learned about the different branches of government and how it works, and what and how they should hold their elected leaders accountable. So today, we are having a fireside chat here in Miramar, and we are lucky to have members of government with us to go ahead and discuss issues. I will hand it over to Aria Lightfoot, and she will be introducing everybody else and asking questions.
Thank you, Verlene. We're just waiting on one person at this time, but if anybody is interested in seeing what the book is about, that's just a yearbook version. We're actually creating a civics book that we plan to distribute within the Belize community at home and outside. That's the prototype at this point. We're actually working on information. So I just want to thank our leaders, because we know that we don't really get to speak to them directly. A lot of perceptions that we have with our leaders are third party, media, and different stuff. Many times people don't understand what goes on. We want solutions to happen overnight. Unfortunately, that's not how government works. And I think it's a great opportunity to speak to our leaders so that they can tell you what some of their issues are. And as citizens or people who are members of the Belize diaspora and the Belize community, how can we help our leaders build the nation of Belize? Because I think everybody has a serious interest, investment-wise, socially. We are tied with a navel string, as they call it, to Belize. So that's what we really want to happen. We want to kind of create this culture of nation building, collaboration, and move away from the culture of division. And I think by speaking to our leaders and learning learning from them, you'll find out that we're actually more alike. We might have different approaches. We might believe certain policies are more important than others, but that's basically what we're doing. My co-host today is Mrs. Rishma Eckert, and she's an attorney here in South Florida. She has her own show that's called Minding Your Business. I have a podcast that's called Two Can View. I speak about government issues. She speaks about issues from the government side, not government, but business side. and she is actually wonderful in learning how to open a business, functions, and stuff. So, Rishma, could you say something?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday morning on a carnival weekend. You should give yourselves a round of applause for doing that. And yes, it's important that you have the government perspective, because as we've heard in some of our chats before, that the government is there to facilitate you. They're not there to solve all your problems. We shouldn't be looking to the government to solve all our problems. They can help us. They can certainly facilitate and streamline systems to do so. But I'm a big advocate of entrepreneurship, doing something for yourself on your own and building for yourself. So that's why I have the Minding Your Business radio show on gluefn.com. And that is a program that I created for our communities where you can go and find resources, how to build your businesses, how to incorporate, what's the best contracts to use, how to trademark, how to copyright. These are things that you need to know as a business owner, and sometimes you have no one to ask, and there's this huge educational gap within our communities of how to do so. So I try to be that voice for our communities and just give them the direction. I don't tell them exactly what to do, because you need a legal consult to do that, but you at least can have the general concept before you start a business of what you need to do to protect yourself and build your business, because success comes when you're minding your business. Thank you, Arya.
So with that said, let me just introduce our leaders. We have the Honorable Karim Musa. He is an elected official and a member of the government. And I will let Mr. Musa introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Aria, and good morning to all the beautiful, lovely Belizean American faces. Quite a beautiful blend as always. Every part of the world we go, we're always very excited to meet Belizeans. We share a common bond, a common dream, and a common goal for our country, and that is for its upliftment and betterment economically, socially, environmentally. That's a new thing. So it's always a pleasure. Thank you all very much for having us this morning. Again, my name is Karim Musa, Area Representative for Caribbean Shores and the Minister of Home Affairs and New Growth Industries.
Thank you for being here. I would also like to introduce our senator. He is a member of the opposition party. Honorable Darrell Bradley, could you please introduce yourself?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As was said before, my name is Darrell Bradley. I am a senator in the Senate of Belize. I was former mayor of Belize City, and it's such a pleasure for us to come out of the country and get a fresh perspective from the Belize diaspora community. One of the things that really has impressed me over the last 2 days is to see the commitment of our diaspora community. You are a vibrant part of Belize, and you want that connection with Belize to continue. Many people in our diaspora do amazing things, fund scholarships, invest in projects back home, bring ideas and investment opportunity, and we want that relationship to continue, and we want that relationship to grow for the betterment of yourselves and for the betterment of people back home. So I'm looking forward to this discussion this morning on a question of leadership and a question of how we could foster a dialogue around development and around the kind of ideas that will be transformative for the Belizean economy and for the Belizean community. So good morning again, and I look forward to a very meaningful and engaging discussion. I want to just really recognize this morning my friend, the Honorable Karim Musa, and a lot of people think politics in Belize is divisive. But one of the things that Karim and I have always said is politics is about sharing ideas. And in the sharing of ideas, we may be different. We're from different political parties, but we're from the same country and we want the same things. Likewise, you and I, we have our roots in Belize and we want the same things. And it's in that plurality and the sharing of ideas that we generate something magical, the improvement and advancement of our country. So I'm very much looking forward to the conversation, and thank you very much for welcoming me to South Florida. We also want to extend our gratitude to the municipal government of Miramar and Broward County for facilitating us, and I look forward to a very engaging discussion.
I would also like to introduce, he's the mayor of Belize City, the Honorable Bernard Wagner. Honorable Bernard Wagner, I always say, has the largest constituency of any elected official in Belize. Please introduce yourself.
It's indeed a pleasure, Aria, to be here this morning. On a Saturday morning, it shows the commitment, obviously, of the people in this room, the diaspora, Minister Musa, Senator Bradley, certainly, my good friend again, the MP for Mess Up. We are so glad to have you. I know hanging out in Miami brings back old days, so you're excused for the little half an hour delay, but thank you again. But certainly from Belize City, the city is one of the largest municipality, and it comes with great challenges, obviously. Many times as a mayor, you are asked to perform certain functions that sometimes comes out of your normal mandate. As a municipality, we have been faced with that for years, and it's a culture that has really taken over the city, where the municipality is mandated to deal with certain infrastructure, garbage collection, keeping the parks, maintain the cemetery. But there also comes along with it some social commitment and social responsibility. And that is where the thin line arise, and you as a leader have to navigate that course, being able to blend physical infrastructure along with the social infrastructure demands. And that's a challenge each and every day. But I have a committed team with me at the municipality that is driven to enforce that we get change in the municipality and we become a modern, smart city. I'm excited about the event today and the discussion we'll have. And I'm certain I want to thank the Civic Fellowship Group. That book is a good book, and we need to see it in Belize City. I could recall growing up, civic was one of our subjects, and it really added value as a child. It formed you as a child. It really teaches you about governance, accountability, and molding you as a person. And I certainly, I just look at the first 4 pages, and it had the flag, the symbols, the national animals, all of those stuff. Our kids in Belize City needs to become acquainted with a book such as this, and so I thank the Civic Fellowship for that great book. Thanks again.
Thank you, Your Worship, Wagner. And we have the Honorable Shine Barrow. He is an elected official in the House of Representatives on the opposition and represents the Mesopotamia division. So, thank you.
Pleasant good morning to everyone. I just have to do disclosure. You know, I'm under the same scrutiny that the minister from Caribbean Shores is under. My wife thinks this is some conspiracy for conduct carnival. So there were no old memories last night. As a matter of fact, a few of my good friends text me when they heard that I was in the city, and they said, "Boy, line up, we're going out tonight." I went home to my hotel. I stay on the beach. I did plan to go and maybe have a drink, and I fell asleep. I'm an old man now, and so I'm about a half an hour away, which is why I'm late. But it is certainly a distinct pleasure to be here. I am a son of the soil, but I'm also a son of the diaspora. You know, I spent my teenage years here. I came here when I was about 8 years old to Brooklyn to live with my mom. And so I know the value of the diaspora. In order for us to develop as a nation, we have to have all hands on deck, which is why I'm a strong proponent of bipartisanship, because all of us need to work together for the common goal of Belize. So certainly the Belizeans in the diaspora are essential to that progress. I commend the minister who supported getting the diaspora to be able to vote in the ICJ. I want to go further than that. I want the diaspora to be able to vote, period. But we have to look at how that would work, whether you guys would maybe pay taxes. I know you send millions and millions and millions of dollars, but we have to figure out the details. The bottom line is the diaspora is essential, is vital. There is no development. We cannot achieve our objectives of transforming our country without the diaspora. So it is my pleasure to be here. Whenever I go to any state in the United States, I always make sure that I engage the diaspora. So it is a pleasure to be here. On behalf of the opposition, I see that we have the Secretary General here, Dr. Carol Bob from the United Democratic Party. Pleasure to see her and all the other people here. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Barrow. If you guys will take your seats. I just need to grab my glasses.
Man, grab the blue mic. Just rotate the mic. Mics are live.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. I was supposed to go last night. I went to the room and I dropped right last week.
Just one of two mics with you, or don't you show one of the mics? So let me start off because I got some concerns that it's all men at the table. But I told them that it was two women who are going to be asking you guys questions.
We're basically cornering them right now. Look at this.
And regarding gender, which I do want to start with, Belize does have one of the lowest women elected. I think it's even in the world. And I know certain countries, I want to say Costa Rica, has come up with a solution where they've created women-only type divisions, just so that we can get women into the electoral area, because 50% of our country are women. Women do participate in the economy. They participate in the household. They're rearing the future generations. And I just want to hear your thoughts, each of your thoughts, about women becoming more active in the political arena.
Can I add just something to that before you guys answer? One of the countries that have been really on the forefront of having women in government is Guyana. Guyana has legislation in place where there's a quota that you have to have certain amount of women in your government. And just to add to Aria's question, is that something that the government would consider in the future as well?
Well, I have had the pleasure of serving as the leader of the opposition And while I served as the leader of the opposition, practically all of my appointments were women, with the exception of Senator Bradley. All of the boards, temporary senators were all women. So I am very conscious of the need for gender equality and gender equity. But I don't agree with the quota system. I prefer to remove the barriers and remove the hurdles and remove all impediments for women, rather than to create women-only divisions, or you can make it to the House of Representatives just because you're women. I think that women are capable, women are equals, and we need to create the reality, the system, for them to achieve whatever it is they can. Because I ran against a woman, and she did what she had to do, and I treated her like I would treat anyone else, and I did not think because she was a woman that I somehow had the upper hand. In fact, she may have had the upper hand, but she could have very well been the member from Mesopotamia. Right now, she had a lot of help from my friend right there, and my other friend in Lake Independence, Curdell Hyde, who's my family actually. But so it's sensitive. I can see why people may want to do that, but I don't subscribe to it. I'm actually taking courses at McGill University right now, and it is controversial. There's a big debate as to how do you go about getting gender equality and gender equity. So while we have to deal with it, I am conscious of it. Everything I do, actually I get into disputes with some of my colleagues because they say, well, what happened to the man? That the lone woman you they appoint? Like, what are you going on, Barrow? And I explain to them, until we get to the reality where the playing field is truly leveled, then I won't have to make those deliberate steps of inclusion. But I stop short of, it's not mandatory. It's not like all of these women are qualified, maybe even more so than the options of men that I had. So it's not like I'm just putting women to put women. I put qualified people. And so whereas traditionally we only think of men, I instinctively think of women. But it is not as if they are just being appointed because they are women. I don't think you should put someone in a division just because she's a woman and just to make up the quota of having a woman as a representative. I think you need to put qualified people who will do the job, especially in elected politics. It's different than being appointed. Those people, you have to work for those people, you have to serve those people, and you can't just have someone there because they're a woman. You need someone there that will work for those people, that has to face the risk of losing the seat in order to truly get the benefit of service. Thank you.
Thank you. And I actually want to do a follow-up comment, but I'll let other people comment further. You said that you want to remove the barriers for women rather than creating quotas. But a lot of times men don't recognize what the barriers are. So sometimes it's important that you put the woman in the boardroom so that they can help you guys define what the barriers are. That's just my opinion on that issue. But I'm a woman, I did some gender studies, so I might be a little bit biased on that front. But Honorable Musa?
Thank you, Aria. Speaking directly to that last point that you made, as it relates to a barrier of entry for women in politics, I think one of the biggest barriers to entry is the behavior of members in the House of Representatives. And that's not something new. It has been over time. People refer to the behavior in the House as a circus. Sometimes it gets humiliating and demeaning, and we criticize others using very derogatory terms. And so that's unacceptable in this day and age. And so what you see is a lot of hesitancy from women to want to get into that sort of tribalism in politics. So I think that we will see greater participation in electoral politics once it is that the men in the House of Representatives change their behavior and realize that, you know what, we are all in here representing our constituencies and representing our country, and we need to do better. Having said that, though, I have to say that our government most certainly values all of the qualified Belizean women. We have put them in very high leadership roles. The Governor General is female. The President of the Senate, Carolyn Trench Sandiford, Madam Speaker, Honorable Valerie Woods. We're talking about the judiciary is female. Justice Arana. The Chief Magistrate, Justice Fraser. When you look at the Customs Department, Mrs. Estelle Leslie is the head, the Comptroller of Customs. And so we certainly value our women in leadership roles, and they have been doing, I have to say, an exceptional job in those capacities.
I just want to contribute 2 points. I do want to recognize what the Honorable Musa has said, because I think in terms of government overall, the government has done a good job in making appointments for females, so that there is demonstrated evidence that when you look at CEO positions, when you look at the judiciary, when you look at heads of department, there is, relatively speaking, an equal playing field, because you can see them in very senior positions. I do think, however, though, that you want to shatter that ceiling, and I do know that there have been calls for special temporary measures to ensure that when you're dealing with the House of Representatives, you will have a certain amount of women's seats that are provided for. There are different ways that you can do that, and I think that that has value. It's not something that's going to be permanent. The idea is that you could do something like that for a 5-year period, a 10-year period, a 15-year period, and then the law will expire. The idea is that just as how we as a society have made senior appointments of women, we need to see more women in actual elected officials. And if we do a system of temporary special measures for a period of 10 or 15 years, I think that we will get into the culture of having more women run for elected offices and be elected, be viable candidates. I also think that there has to be discussions at the party political level, so that the Honorable Musa mentioned the conduct of elected officials, but I think the campaign structure itself, the party structure itself, has to embrace more a culture of inclusivity. One of the things that I likewise would think that there would be a significant amount of impact is if we look at things like term limits for elected officials. One of the things I think that is a challenge to our discourse when we talk about politics and leadership is that we think leadership is ours. And if you look at our history, people who have been elected in Belize keep their seats for very long times. And I think if we could look at a range of options, including temporary special measures, and including looking at term limits for elected officials, you would see a recycling of new ideas and new people. And you will not only attract more women, you're going to attract more younger people, you're going to attract a diversity of people and also a diversity of ideas. And I think that that idea of term limits also will give more parties an opportunity to secure seats. So it's a wider discussion, not only of the inclusion of women, but how do we make the political structure in Belize more inclusive of everybody?
To add to the discussion, certainly women in politics and gender equality is very important for me, and I want to reinforce what the minister said. At our municipal level, for instance, 4 out of 10 of the councillors are women. My city administrator, who was the highest post in the municipality, is a woman, and we have varied number of high managers position that are filled by women. Personally, for me, my greatest teacher and my greatest leader ever was my late mom. And so I have a very close attachment to women in leadership and women in politics, and to reinforce that, we at the Belize City Council drive through the Caribbean Sister City Network programs to advocate women in politics. We recently had a forum which engaged women from all across the municipalities who were councillors, and they had this session where they drove home the point of really empowering women to really take up leadership role in politics. And so from that end, I see it as a culture. From way back, women have been deemed to be in the home, and that has gradually been changing. And you'll see gradually, as women begin to become professional and they begin to see the importance of them taking on these types of role, you'll see more women in politics.
Thank you. So yesterday we had a very robust discussion on business and investments in Belize. So other than business and investments, other than that, what do you consider the number one issue that you would tackle as your priority? What is the number one issue that you see happening in Belize right now? And you only can pick one issue. You can't say all of them. One issue.
Do you have to guess what mine is?
Having Saturday morning meeting.
Yes, mine, of course, being the Minister of Home Affairs, is the crime situation that we have in our country, and particularly as it relates to Belize City crime. What we have seen over the last year since the pandemic, I know a lot of the focus has been around gang crimes and violence, senseless murders. But when you look at the statistics from 2019 to now, gang murders are actually cut in half, believe it or not. And so, whereas last year or the year before, we had about 55 murders, 54 of which were gang related. This year, we have about 60 murders, and only about 30 of them are actually gang related. And so, there's this heightened sense that, oh, it's all gang violence. But what we've seen over the last year in times of COVID is actually a lot of domestic violence crimes. We've seen where there was the double murder, suicide, and then other instances, the elderly man who was murdered the other day. And so there is a lot of crime all across the country. But what I am happy to report today is that on last Tuesday in Cabinet, we approved a remarkable paper. It was formulated with the assistance of the Leadership Intervention Unit headed by Mr. William Dawson, along with Assistant Commissioner Rosado and a host of other individuals, pastors. Pastor Rock is on the committee. We also have members from Rotary, the business community, lecturers, doctors, attorneys. And so it was a wide cross section of people who actually formulated a roadmap on how it is we're going to solve the crime situation, particularly in Belize City. And of course, it involves a multi-sectoral approach. We've been saying this time and time again, crime is not a police issue. Yes, police must do policing work. We must investigate and we must ensure we get conviction. But crime is directly tied to poverty. It is directly tied to the economic status of our country in a time of COVID. And so that is why we need this multi-sectoral approach, focusing at the very center on education. And so I was very pleased to see in this paper that we presented free education on the south side of Belize City, being the hallmark of this entire paper and building from there. And so our focus has to be keeping our children in school, and of course thereafter transitioning them into job training, job placement, training them with entrepreneurial skills. This is a whole big plan, and we're excited to unveil it in the coming weeks ahead because it's very elaborate. I know we can discuss hours on end how complex this issue is, but certainly as the Minister of Home Affairs, it is my number one commitment, my number one focus is to bring down the crime situation in Belize.
For me, my focus is equal opportunity. I believe that certainly would impact crime. It impacts everything. But in Belize, right now, there is the rich, the elite, and the people that are connected to them, and the poor. Certainly with COVID, it has totally eroded the middle class or the working class. I think we have about 120,000 people that are unemployed. So we're in a dilemma, but outside of that, Belize is not or hasn't been a society for the past 40 years, in my view, where you can ascend, where you can go from being poor to being working class, to being middle class, to being upper middle class, to being rich. And I'd like to see that. So that's all about wealth creation and just giving opportunity to everyone, whether you're from the south side, whether you're from Toledo, you're from the rural areas, wherever you're from, you should have the ability to dream and to actualize your dreams. And currently, I'm afraid that that is not the case. So I would like to see the next 40 years be a 40 years where no matter which administration is in, that we have a culture, because it's not a government thing. I don't believe it's a political thing. It is a cultural thing. People don't think in terms of sharing the wealth, empowering everyone. And it makes no sense because we are consumers as human beings. The rich consume more, and sometimes the poor even consume more than the rich because it's usually the people that don't have wealth that always are aspiring and always want to spend. So for the business community, for the rich people, it would be better for all of society to have more, because the more they have, the more they would spend. And so that is something that I am focused on and will continue to focus on.
I would have to side with the minister that crime clearly, as the mayor of the largest municipality, the impact of crime certainly really add to the economic downward trend that we are seeing in Belize City. Like you could always have nice streets, you could have tall buildings, but safety of residents plays an important role, and that is integral to any developing or economy or any developing city or any modern city. Safety is important, and being as the mayor of the city, and we try to be a stakeholder in the fight against crime in different capacities. We are not mandated to fight crime due to legislation, but certainly we want to contribute in the social programs that we do, sports, crime prevention, grief therapy, and that sort of activity. We try to assist in those key areas. Belize City has many gangs, Senator, and it's a warfare where a lot of Creole kids we've seen losing lives and losing purpose for life, having no value for life. As a child growing up, all of us here valued life, and it is sad to see that the 14-year-old and the 15-year-old minister does not value life. So it comes back to the family unit. We have to build back strong family unit. Minister can't solve it. The senator, the MP can't solve it. Myself cannot solve it. We can contribute and put in place the enabling environment, jobs creation, social activities. But at the end of the day, it has to come back to the mother and the father, building stronger family units. The church have to play a stronger role. The church can't just be the Sunday church where we only invite the membership. It has to be, we invite families and we reach out. Growing up in Belize City, I used to see so many, they used to call them assemblies of God, where they would set up these huge tents all across the city, and we would attend as young kids. And so it served as a guiding light to us, and we developed values. And what has happened here in our city is that our kids don't value life. And some of the statistics coming out of the prison is that 58% of those incarcerated are Creole, right? And another 47% out of that is between the ages of 15 to 25. So it clearly shows a breakdown in the family unit, and we need all hands on board. We need the churches, we need the NGOs, we need the government, right? We need to get back into sports. I used to run sports program in the gyms at Civic Center Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. I dine at the gym every time with them kids. We used to have 14 senior teams, one other 12 under 17, one other 15 junior teams. So it was a whole pool of kids. That has really went on a downward trend, and I believe clearly I support the minister in that new program, and we need to get the family unit engaged as well, Minister. Thanks.
My issue would be more of an issue of process. I was reading the news about Belize, and I saw where Dr. Gale recently put out something that was more comprehensive than what he previously did. And listening to the discussion both over the last few days and this morning, we know what the solutions are. We know the problems in Belize. The challenge that I have with the development of the country, and what I would say would be one thing, would be the how. And I think that how is a leadership question. And when I say leadership, I don't mean leadership at the political level. The mayor spoke about how do you involve families, how do you involve the church, how do you involve different stakeholders in a conversation on building resiliency and empowerment in Belize. I oftentimes find that the political structures in Belize don't work because the leaders don't listen to one another. And when I'm here in South Florida over the last day or so, we've heard a lot of ideas. We've heard a lot of people who have resources and people who want to bring growth and development and advancement. We have a lot of people in the diaspora throughout the United States and throughout the world who are very well-resourced and who want to bring resources to the country. We have people in Belize who want to do that. It's how do we have the correct leadership and the correct processes that could make the actions, because we have the ideas that will bring about change. But we need the proper leadership at all sectors of society. And so one of the things that I will say that Belize needs quite urgently is a reform agenda. And we need to talk about reform of the political structure. We need to talk about reform of the party political system. There has been talk about things like campaign finance reform. We need to talk about how do we reform the public service? How do we ensure that people get the services that that's their right when you go into any government department and you access healthcare, social services, education? How do we create a system of government that is reformed, that is enabling, that delivers quality services? And how do we ensure that at all level there's leadership that is action oriented and that's performance based? And I think that any change that will come to the country, both with respect to crime, with respect to economic development, with respect to education advancement, it has to be on the backdrop of people development and empowering leaders at all sectors to be that change within the society. And one of the things that I will say is, over the course of the last year or so, just sharing the conversation with this table, I am very pleased that I am among fellow leaders who are committed to that plurality and working together in a bipartisan way to be inclusive, to make sure that we can be action oriented. Because again, everybody has the answer. We know what the problems are. It's how do we have the leadership to implement the solutions? When you come to South Florida, you see all the things that they're doing here. We can do that in Belize, but again, we need the system in place that attracts ideas and that treats with those ideas in a very respectful way, that's inclusive and that can bring about the change.
Thank you very much. I am somebody that is about systems also. I think a lot of things simply don't happen because we don't have the right processes in place. There's no follow through, there's no follow up, and then an idea dies a natural death. One of the things the US have here or has here, they're called administrative agencies. They're considered, they call them the fourth arm of government. And what they have done, they have empowered the FCC, the SEC, all these different agencies that have their own judicial power, their appointment power. They have the executive does the appointment, but it doesn't have to go through a court system to hold people accountable. And they're 100% responsible for everything within that area. So if there's a violator, they take care of the violation. They do the investigations. And only if you feel that you're aggrieved, then it goes into the court system. But if it's a rule, the courts won't even mess with it. If they pass it, that's the rule, that's how it is. And the reason I'm saying that is because we tend to expect our leaders to do everything. I expressed to Honorable Karim Musa that I feel for I come from a police officer. My father was a police. I've worked within the prosecution system. I know police can't solve any problems for a lot of different reasons. They're not social workers. And they come at the end. They come when the crime is committed. They're not at the beginning. And a lot of things that we do, and I guess it's because we're an old colony, and I do want to talk about decolonization, because the Honorable Barrow brings it up in a very respectful way, but that's what he's talking about, I think. We are from a colony, and the colony was doing everything, the king or the England, and then we were just administrators in that sense. Now we're independent. A lot of our communications have been disjointed, and that's where the reform part comes in. A lot of our culture is not conducive to a business environment, to be honest, because the attitudes might not be the right attitude to conduct business. And then we have the culture of dependency. So with that being said, what are your thoughts on decolonizing, or what do you think decolonization is? And should we go through a process in the reform process?
Well, certainly that is exactly what I have been saying for the last day, and I will say today. I do commend the government for passing the Emancipation Day holiday. The previous administration, we observed Emancipation Day, but this administration actually made it a holiday. And I do know, don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but I do know the member from Lake Independence will be introducing a very significant motion at the next sitting of the House in regards to reparations. I do believe that we need reparations in Belize, because you put it very kindly and politely when you're talking about England, but colonialism is not the king of England. Colonialism is slavery. So for so long, you had human beings who enslaved other human beings to extract wealth, and they would literally work people to death. When you talk about the family unit, your worship, the reason, especially on the south side, you have a deteriorated family structure is because in slavery, they would separate mothers and fathers. Women would be raped in front of their significant other. The men would be castrated in front of their families. And the enslavers, were promiscuous. They used to rape all the women. So when you see in African American and Afro-Caribbean culture, this pimp culture and, men, chasing women, we didn't get that. That's not a black thing. That's not a Creole thing. We got that from the enslavers. So certainly we need to decolonize. You look at the south side. That is Ibutong. That is the name of the south side. That is where all the Africans that came from Nigeria were, and the Creole, which is the ones that mixed with the British, they were more on the north side. So when you look at what we're going through, it is all remnants of colonialism and the fact that the politicians over the last 40 years became the de facto slave masters. Not all of them, but most of them have a mindset to keep the population poor, desperate, and dependent, because then they will continue to get elected. And as I said yesterday, that is a colonial mindset. That makes absolutely no sense. But remember, the enslavers, they weren't thinking about empowerment. They weren't thinking about, well, I'm going to teach Bernard how he can have his own plantation. I'm going to teach Kareem, how he can, be a farmer and own acres and acres of land. That's not what they were thinking. They would work the enslaved people to death and then discard them. So our forefathers, as we transitioned into independence, Belize, some people say, well, we never have slavery as bad. I don't know about that. There's no such thing. And I'm just saying, but if you look at how slavery was, there was almost a mindset in some people that were enslaved to accept it. And, it's okay for someone to deny you of your rights and deny you of your humanity, and we just go along with it. And so when the politicians transition into independence, it's just like Emancipation Day. Yes, it was passed, but the enslavers are the ones that got paid on Emancipation Day. They got paid for the people that they enslaved, because they would lose property. So they would lose their business. They were in the business of inhumane treatment. And they were paid for that, and the people that were enslaved got nothing. All over the Caribbean. That is why Haiti goes through what it goes through, because in 1804, they defeated the French, and they had to pay the French $200 billion, some astronomical amount of money. But I say all that as far as your decolonization ambition, it absolutely has to happen, and leadership is the bottom line on all levels, not just political leadership, but there are families in Belize who benefited from slavery. And that is why reparations is important, because I don't want to quarrel with them. I don't want to shame them, but they have a responsibility. They have an an obligation. All of us have an obligation to train our people the same way our people were trained to be subjugated. Our people were trained to be human cattle. They have to be trained to be landowners. They have to be trained to be family. Nobody ever taught them when emancipation came. The slaves were forced to take jobs, paid in libet or nothing. They raised the price on land. They didn't get any land, so you can't vote. When independence came, again, there was no deliberate agenda to address the consequences of slavery. It's like it never happened. But then you have the South Side, which is a glaring reminder of what happened. Right? Those people aren't like that because they're inferior or something wrong with them people a city. There's a reason it's different in Corozal and in Orange Walk. They didn't go through what those people went through. So we certainly have to address that on all levels. But reparations is, to me, the best way, because you document it, you identify it, you say yes, and you dedicate the money, the investment towards it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whenever you raise that issue, Aria, it brings to mind my brother Yasser and Yaya Marin. They do one-man protest, they don't care. If they have nobody behind them. But let me tell you something, their voices are very loud. Yasser through his art and his passion, and of course Yaya, she is a fierce defender of Belize, and certainly wants to decolonize us as quickly as possible, and for us to erase this whole feeling that we have about our colonial past. Because if you recall, Pastoral Building, they were right in front of Pastoral Building saying, how is it that we're going to commemorate and bring back a slave master and name this building off of a slave master? And so they're certainly doing everything they can for us to realize that we are our own people now. Honorable Shine touched on a very important topic, and perhaps it is the greatest crime against the Belizean people, and that is the dependency system in our politics that has continued, where it is that, like the Honorable Shine is saying, that ministers feel all powerful, unlimited discretion in how they do business, and certainly those things are changing over time with the implementation of various pieces of legislation, very critical pieces of legislation, and we are already on that road in terms of what you would call domesticating various aspects of the UNCAC legislation, civil asset recovery, public disclosure bills, unexplained wealth bills. So these are all things that are coming to fruition and will serve as a check and balance against the politicians. But definitely that greatest crime of dependency politics, we have to move away from that. And certainly we all need to do our part and lend our voices so that we can continue to realize we need to decolonize as quickly as possible. Each and every one of us in terms of that, no?
I think the decolonization comes within the context of the conference from this idea of improving productivity. And I've oftentimes heard this notion that when Belizeans go to Chetumal, they act differently. And when Belizeans come to the United States, they act differently. But when we're in Belize, we act a certain way. And I think part of this discussion on making our society truly independent and flourishing is really the issue of accountability, but individual accountability. That yes, we're doing a lot of things and we're talking about a lot of politics and reform and whatever, but the individual citizen, that's a plantation mentality. In the plantation, my brother, who I admire very much, used to tell me, and he told me over the last maybe like week or so, he gave me this thing. How is it that 2,000 people could enslave 5 million? How is it that in Belize, 31 people could enslave 421,000 people? It is because the individual does not realize what their true power is. And that is a question of accountability on the individual. I've oftentimes said this: politicians do what people vote for. That is what happens in the United States, that there is a genuine policy discussion. We talk about free education. We talk about tax reform. We make it about policies rather than about personalities, rather than about slinging mud, rather than about this dependency syndrome. But that has to come from the backdrop of an empowered citizenry. And there's a lot of things that go into that conversation about education and so forth. But we, at a certain level, need to start to have conversations about the citizen being involved in the process of change. And the mayor spoke about families and individuals and so forth. And that's what we need to do. We need to hold the Belizean population accountable. The Honorable Musa mentioned the idea of reform, and there's a lot of things that go into our politics on election day, and we could talk about things like vote buying and something, but somebody receives that money, somebody asks for it, somebody solicits it. If a politician is bribed, he doesn't bribe himself, or she doesn't bribe himself. So that there has to be a conversation on how do we reform the Belizean mind, so that we focus on productivity. Every person in this room, probably when they go back to Belize, they talk about the level of services that you receive in Belize, both in the public and the private sector. We know that's a problem. It's how do we change that? When you come to the United States, you experience an entirely different way of life that's based on meritocracy and performance. That's what we need to have in terms of the conversation in Belize. So we talk about it from an entitlement mentality, that some people in Belize believe that the government should take care of them. That is not the role of government. That is not the role of leadership. We need to have social justice, and we need to have social welfare programs, but these programs need to be empowering. You can't live on that. And I think that the leadership needs to have a serious ideological soul searching as to how is it as a country we empower our people to realize that they are the change makers in their own lives, and they are responsible for their own empowerment. Rishma mentioned this in the introduction, that the role of government is facilitative, so that we are only here to facilitate a system that allows people to chase after their own dreams. And that system has to be inclusive and empowering, but that system has to rest on the individual's effort and labor themselves. And it is in decolonizing Belize, enabling the individual citizen to recognize that the master who lives in the house, who is only himself, his wife, and 3 kids, can't conquer all 10,000 of us. But we're letting that happen because we are giving our individual power to that person. And it is when we reclaim that power and also that responsibility, because it's a duty on us, it's only then that our society will change. Because we tend to think in many contexts that we blame the politician. It's not the politician's fault, it's our own fault. Because we create the nightmare that we live in. And if we want change, we have to have conversations about change. And we have to do the things that bring change.
Yes, you said a mouthful, Senator, and certainly. But I'll say this, 2 stories. On an election day, in the heap of election, voter, mayor, I go 40 deep. So I'm like, what you mean 40 deep? I control 40 people. And this is what I need. I tell them, listen to me. I tell her just say this, listen to me, I know the deal so. I prefer lose the election than go away there. Second story. Woman came to my office with her child, right? And said, Mayor, my child, I need school fees, real doing bad. And I told her, I will help you this time. But she is a very productive person. All she needed as well was some equipment because she does her little cooking. And so I facilitated her with the stove and the other supplies. And you know, when she left that office, she said, Mayor, with this help you gave me, I'll not have to come to you again down the road for school fees. That is what you speak about when you speak about dependency. And it takes two. For the decolonization to end, it has to be an awakening, right, of the mindset of our own people. Just like what you said, it takes two. The politician can't give somebody money if that person not asking for it. And so decolonization did not end at the dawn of independence, right? It continues on our process and about changing mindsets of our people, right? About changing attitudes, about empowering them to be their own boss and to become independent, economically, socially, culturally, all of that. And that is why we as leaders have to drive such change. We have to ensure that we stand for something. It's easy for any politician to give that person a hands out on election day, but at what cost? And that is a question we as leaders have to live with every day.
I just want to add quickly that a big part of this is collectivity. We all have to want it. It's not about the politicians and the people. The people got to how they got to, not by accident. That was deliberate design. You used to be afraid to leave the plantation because you would die. So people are afraid to be accountable and afraid to be responsible for themselves because genetically, that's how our people have been trained. But the one last thing I want to add is the financiers, the people that finance the politicians. They are part of this problem too. Because when I tell you, I have financed my own campaign for the most part because you would go to people and for them to give you this, they want the whole room just to give you a bottle of water, right? Whereas if we had powerful, wealthy people who were financing candidates based on policy, based on, you know what, I want to see education, I want to see a hospital bill, I want to see you guys focus on this and focus on that, we would have better candidates, we would have better leaders. But the financier come to you and say, listen, I want to give you $500,000, but I want back 50 million. Now you better find a way to give me that back. Me don't care about no education or no healthcare. You know? Then people could kill themselves and they go all dead. Just make sure I get mine back. And so, you know, we need to have that conversation on that level as well. We need those people to lead and to say that I'm not giving my money to these politicians that are only going to enrich themselves, and I don't want to be enriched. I don't want nothing back. I want to spend my money. I want to change this country for everybody.
Thank you. That was a great question that you had asked. I want to just reiterate that I am a huge advocate for entrepreneurship for that very same reason. And I will say very respectfully in front of the politicians in front of us that I tell people respectfully that for politicians, that with politicians, your number one job, respectfully, is to get elected again, right? To be in power. that is what your number one job is. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong or whatever, but you have a different focus from private sector and entrepreneurship. So when we advocate with our private, initiatives, that is with a focus of making the change from a private sector point of view. And again, respectfully, because how are you going to advocate for change if you're not in the positions of power that you are? So that's my little spiel here. We were trying to be very respectful of your time, but we did invite people to come here. So I would like to open the mic to ask questions from our live audience. Please, one question per person. Make it very direct and make it general. So please don't come up and ask any individual politicians to solve any problem that you have in Belize. One general question, please, in the interest of time. Whoever wants to come first, just come over here, please.
Go ahead, Dr. Williams.
All right. Just pass the mic. All right. Gentlemen, welcome again, and thanks for giving so much of your time to us. From our point of view, I'll tell you, the discussion is it makes all my cells get motivated because I'm hearing all the right things. So let me tell you what I'd like you to think about. This decolonization have to happen from the individual and from the politician. I'm watching all of you up there, and if you don't get decolonized, you can't help other people get decolonized. So my question to you is, what you want to do when you go back home and you will figure out how to try get this decolonization, almost like my cleansing. I will leave it there. I have a lot of points, but I think other people need to hear.
Well, I have been doing decolonization from the moment I entered politics, because I come from a different mindset. Very fortunate to have spent a lot of time in the United States, and people are very empowered here. I was a 19-year-old child, and I was able to have my own publishing company, become a millionaire, and go on to have a production company, then a distribution company, and there are tears because then it was somebody that I did business with, and somebody that did business with that person, and everyone was making money and being successful. And so that's what I know. I don't know that, I suffer while the big man, which is the mentality in Belize. And I'm very pleased to hear what Mayor Wagner said, because I did the same thing on election day. I did not spend $1. Nobody can come to me and ask me for no money for go vote, because I help people all the time. And I don't just help people, I help them to help themselves. So I am the biggest proponent of entrepreneurship. Like I said, I have a women's entrepreneurship, I have a small business development, because I don't want you to be dependent on me. And I totally disagree with the mistress of ceremony. It is not my job to get re-elected. It is my job to serve the people, and it is their right and their power to return me to the honorable house if they so choose. While I have the privilege of serving people, I will do the best that I can do to make systematic change. And I think that has been the problem over the last 40 years. The mindset that you speak of, that has been the mindset. I want to get elected, and so you keep people dependent, you keep them desperate, and so they need you, or they feel they need you. People don't need politicians. It's a symbiotic relationship. We need each other as human beings. And so, we have to appreciate that. But I have, over the last 7 years, given the power to my people. I start from primary school. I created a resource center with computers and everything, but not just computers. I would have my friends from Columbia University, when they would visit Belize, come in and talk to my kids. I worked with human development to do a family workshop Because as the mayor said, the kids don't just become murderers. They learn that somewhere. And absence of a mother and father, then the gang leaders become their mother and father. And so they get indoctrinated. So I before I was elected to the House of Representatives, I was working in Mesopotamia with this mindset. No dependency. I don't want to be a career politician, and I think that is the problem, where people look at it from that vantage point that this is a career. No, this is about patriotism. This is about, as the Right Honorable George Price would say, nation building. And while you have the privilege of serving, you do your part for systematic change. It has to be the collective. I always tell people I built 2 houses for Old Man Patico and a lady named Diana, right on Amara Avenue, because my office was there. And right across the street, man, you know, the houses were just run down. And so I got donations, I spent some of my money, but it was a nightmare because everybody else vexed with me. How she get house? But this was a woman who, you know, had some issues, some dependency issues, substance abuse. She was in an abusive relationship. The gentleman that she was, you know, in a relationship with used to beat her up and throw her out of his place. And then the place she was living was all run down and broken down. Then she had a son. She was taking care of an old man. So I felt like, how do I come to my office every day? And watch this, I have to do something. But the collective was not thinking like that. They say, well, she get, I forget, because for she vote no word more than my vote. Right? But it's fine. I took the risk because that's not the way it should be. It should be about the collective as a community. She's our sister. Right? We need to take care of her, and everybody in the community needs what some of us need more than others. So I think, again, the decolonization started for me a long time ago. I always tell people, I faced a lot of criticisms when I came into politics. Obviously, being the son of a prime minister, you know, people thought that I was the son of the prime minister. No, I was the son of Imyon Maivit, who was a laborer in Brooklyn, cleaning people's houses, you know, elevate to be a receptionist, poor woman. So I know what it is to suffer. I know what it is to create wealth, right? I had to go through the ranks. Nobody gave me anything. I was more successful than my father when he was in opposition. That's actually when I signed my multi-million-dollar record deal. But I say all that to say, I no conda Belize to become famous and rich as a politician, which unfortunately that is what some politicians or most politicians do. They get into politics for the bag, right? For the bag thing where they like joke with me. Unfortunately, right? They got title. I had a minister, right? I had an honorable. You know, while you are honorable because you're a patriot and because you're serving your people. So the term honorable does have meaning to me, but I know into no title. I don't want to get rich. I'm happy because you forgot to mention your Attorney General is a woman as well. And she is certainly a distinguished lawyer, and, you know, I certainly respect her efforts. Yes, we need that asset identification legislation. We need that enrichment, self-enrichment. How you get money, how you communal politics, and you never got nothing. You got house on the highway, you got house at San Pedro, you own 100 acres of land. That certainly is not who I am. So I came into politics to empower my people, and that's what I've been doing. That's what I'll continue to do. I'm happy to have this conversation with like-minded people, and hopefully we could inspire each other, inspire the new generation of leaders, inspire our financiers, and Belize as a whole. And the last thing I'd like to say, I know I'm being long-winded, just for the diaspora, your investment doesn't always have to be monetary. Mentorship, it is very important. Find kids all over Belize, whether it's in the rural areas, whether it's in the inner city, and empower them, teach them, change their mindset. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
I think
We
Leon
have-
has a question. Anybody else
Morning
have a
again.
question? Okay. 1, 2, 3.
One theme that seems to be repetitive, continuous, prevalent is culture, mindset, culture. I see a lot of development all throughout Belize. As a child of the South, culture capital to be exact, I kind of see that slow down there. I think about mindsets. When you guys think about development throughout the country, is there anything we can do as a collective to really start to get that tongue, Dangriga, to really change that mindset? Because I do believe a lot of it is within the people itself. And I've tried, but you meet a lot of roadblocks with the people themselves. Anything from a government level that you guys have in mind to try to stimulate that economy?
And I just want to say, we do have 3 more questions, and we're trying to finish at 12 o'clock.
Yes, thank you very much for your question there, Mr. Anderson. I'm very proud of our area representative, the Honorable Louis Zabani. He is an educator, and I think education plays a huge role when it comes to changing mindsets that have been ingrained for years. And he has a great vision as well. And we as a political party and as a government, we need to ensure that we change the whole dynamics of Dangriga in particular. Like you mentioned, it's a very economically depressed town for many years, but it's so rich with culture, so rich with people, warmth, everything, you name it, Dangriga has it. And I always say this, we only go to Dangriga November 19. Imagine that. And this is culture capital, but we all converge in Dangriga one day out of the year when it has so much more to offer than just that one day. And so we saw where under the previous administration, there was a contract signed for the port. I think that injection would be huge for Dangriga, for a niche market of tourism. So not the carnivals and all of that, smaller ships that want to experience that authentic feel, to go there and to eat the food and to share with the people and the culture of Dangriga. That is where I think we're going in terms of the tourism of Dangriga. And like I said, he has our full support, the full government support to ensure that we do change things when it comes to Dangriga.
Good morning, everyone. Carol Bob here. So I listened to Mr. Musa, I listened to everyone, and thank you all, but I want to particularly mention what he said. And I agree with him that if we are to change and build Belize, we need multi-sectorial approach. And I want to define it much more than multi-sectorial, and I want to ask you to respond to this, because when we are in government, UDP, PUP, multi-sectorial mean we work with the people where they not the power with we. I'm telling you, that's a fact. I'm a victim. Well, I'm gonna call myself a victim. I have experienced it. We had a meeting, and the Honorable Patrick Faber had invited me, and I've spoken with Honorable Zabani, and I said to him, one of the ways to really combat this crime, this increased crime and violence, is that education, like what you rightly said, is at the key of it. I shared with him that I have a proposal. The mayor and I talk a lot sometimes, not a lot, but we are friends. But, yeah, so, my point is that we're true, if we say multi-sectoral, make it be that. Not just make it be just PUP, and if they invite me, who afraid for she kind of what she that UDP, we have to stop that. We cannot continue like that. I have a proposal, and it's called the Path to Resilience. It looks at literacy, because education is a real equalizer. It looks at financial literacy, entrepreneurship. As I came here, I told her I want to link with you because I have work that I want to do. I think Honorable Barrow mentioned mentorship. That is key too. Because if you look at yourselves, I can speak for myself, education made a difference for me. And I'm sure for you too, Bernard. You would not be where you are because I never grew up rich. So let us work together. Tell us what you mean by multi-sectoral and how we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bob. You hit the nail on the head, actually. And it's refreshing. On the last occasion of the House of Representatives, my friend, the Honorable Shine, was the leader of the opposition at the time. And we presented, I believe, 13 bills, Honorable Shine. And for the first time, I'm sure, in the history of this country, there was no objection to the 13 bills. There was support coming from both sides of the aisle. And that was very refreshing for me as a politician, to sit there and to see that we can get up and offer constructive criticism and support bills that are good for Belize. When it comes to the paper, the cabinet paper, and I'd gladly share that with you, Dr. Bob. Like I said, it came from all across, everybody in the churches even, like I said, sit on this panel, regardless of political affiliation, because I could tell you there are people who are open supporters of one political party and then open supporters of the other, sitting on this leadership intervention unit. So we have put aside our political differences in order to solve this crime situation. And that is a very proud feeling from me as minister, that we can do that. A lot of people don't know this, but the last time when we went to prison, the Honorable Shine Barrow was right next to me. And so we went there together. Again, it's not something that we publicize, but we do recognize that crime, the bullets don't have red or blue written on them. It affects every one of us, all of our families. We know someone affected by crime. And so we have to put our political differences aside. And so I'd like to share with you what we came up with in terms of the leadership intervention unit and from the churches. And then, of course, get your input as well, because everybody's input is extremely valuable in addressing this issue. Thanks. Yes, thank you so much.
I would also like to reinforce what the minister said. There comes a time when leadership have to look past colors, and I could see a gradual going away from the way it used to be. Obviously, as you see, four of us sitting here, I have to I have to also add that in my first term as mayor, and this may not have gone down in the books, or people may have not recognized that as a mayor from a political persuasion, I got a bill passed through the House of Representatives under your dad, Dean Barrow, the former Prime Minister, passed through the municipal paper for a city council that was from a different political persuasion, but it requires that we as leadership begin to show maturity, that in days of petty politics and hate has to come to an end. And many times on Facebook you see disparaging remarks on politicians, people speaking about politicians that they don't even know. This hatred has to come to an end, and you can clearly see from the leadership standpoint that we want to change Senator Bradley here. PM Barrow, MP Barrow. You know PM yet? But MP Barrow, Minister here, it's clearly a changing of the winds, and we have to recognize it and we have to give kudos to it and not just downplay it. Thank you.
I just want to say I'm happy to be here in front of you great leaders. I feel like Belize, has a future. And I want to say my name is Jason Waite. I've been a Belizean all my life, right? Born and raised. Live here in America now. But I've seen a lot. I had a lot of friends that pass. And unfortunately, it's divided, this color thing. And Dr. Bob touched on something serious, So just speaking on their behalf, all my friends and family in Belize and everybody here, I just want to say I took a trip to the Dutch Caribbean and I took a little tour, on an excursion. And the person that narrated said that the Dutch kingdom gives their youths an opportunity to go to Holland, get educated and come back and give to the Dutch islands. Curacao, that's where I was. I want to just maybe shed some light on that. Hopefully you all can come together, unify the red and the blue for the people, not just the sides, and give them maybe some training, some discipline, give them some knowledge. Maybe not teach them how to shoot gun, but teach them education, how to write and read, and some maybe chores at home and stuff like just organization. Because as a man now, and growing up in Belize where you're coming from, I had friends that had children and they all dead now, and the kids growing up, some of the kids died too because they followed that path that the father took, So for all the people in Belize, enough love and respect, yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? Oh, yes.
Yes, is it morning or afternoon? Say good afternoon. Okay. So there seems to be a consensus that the coming together of you all is a great thing, and I think so too, and I applaud Aria for making it possible because there's always been the perception that red and blue are enemies of each other, and that really creates a lot of division in the country. No doubt, that's been our heritage for a long time, and it might be that gets to change here in the near future, and with continued dialogue like this. Because, in the house, I know house business is more serious, and in the house, you're more at each other's throats. But if you could take it down a notch and humanize yourself in such scenes like this, situations like this, I feel a warmth toward y'all rather than a sense of antagonism, right? But my question has to do with the violence in Belize that y'all addressed, and the thing is that we've been crying a lot recently. It hurts. There's a lot of pain, a lot of tears, and one of the things is, it seems to me that there's no accountability and justice for the people that have committed the crimes and the people that the crimes are committed against. And the crimes are on both sides of the fence, from the police that should be doing their job and from the criminals on the street. My question is, who gets to decide the charge? The DPP alone, or does that person have some oversight as far as they make their decision? And can that decision process be more transparent to the people of Belize so they can better understand the process that went through, that they went through to make the decision? Because we as a people, we feel like when the decision is made that we're cheated from justice. And we want some transparency and some accountability to better understand, because these are serious crimes and they really impact us, and we want to know better what went through that decision-making process so we can better understand. And if there is an avenue, if we feel like that decision was made, under the table for political reasons, to hush the situation, to ease it or whatever, we need to know that it's in the best interest of the country, done in the most judicial manner, in due process, and what kind of oversight we have in the case that people feel like that decision wasn't made properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. When it comes to the prosecution of serious criminal offenses, like in the case of a murder or a manslaughter, the police would investigate. And once they have investigated and gathered statements, usually in the form of witness statements, which probably accounts for most of the reasons why we have failed convictions, failed prosecutions rather, because eyewitnesses are not willing to participate, even at the very early onset in giving a statement. But by the time it gets to a trial, some 4 years later, they're, even more hesitant to come to court and to face the defendant, to sit in the witness box. And that is why we are working towards introducing the protection of witnesses legislation that should be in front of the House at the next sitting. That's very important. But when it comes to making the final decision, the Director of Public Prosecutions, she has an independent seat, meaning it's like a judge. No minister can call her and tell her how to do her job or what charges to proffer. No police can interfere in her discretion and her decision making. At the end of the day, it is up to her based on the evidence that the police have gathered from, like I said, witnesses, DNA evidence, what have you. What is before her, she has to make a decision between whether it's murder or manslaughter by negligence. But to answer your question, whether or not you can challenge her decision as a citizen, I believe that would be by way of a judicial review proceeding. So it's a civil case that you take to the Supreme Court as a concerned citizen that well, obviously you would have had to seen the case file, the disclosure, and then you take that case to the Supreme Court to say the Director of Public Prosecutions, in your opinion, should have charged with murder instead of manslaughter. And then a judge would then decide based on what's on paper, whether or not she made the right decision, so to speak. So I think that's the only possible civil outcome that you could have, civil recourse that you could have in challenging the DPP's decision. But at the end of the day, like I said, that is her power, her authority to make that type of decision, not any politician or not the police department.
I'd just like to address your comment as far as justice. And it is certainly something that I have spoken to Minister Musa about. And I believe that the government needs to look at how do we get to secure these convictions? Because right now there is no justice in Belize. And it didn't start with this administration. So, but you can commit a murder and it's almost as if you don't have to worry about getting convicted. Now, you could get arrested because you could arrest anybody. But securing a conviction is another matter. And what happens is they'll arrest someone, they'll sit there for a year or so, and the DPP will withdraw the case. So there is no justice. And until that happens, there is nothing the Minister of Police could do to solve crime, because we need a deterrent. I, as a young man, made a mistake when I was 19 years old, and I paid heavily. But that was a transformative experience because I paid. If I didn't pay, I may have continued on the wrong path and destroyed my life irreversibly. And what we have now is the way our system is set up. Again, I don't want our system to become a police state. I don't want us to warehouse our children, our people, and everything to jail. But there has to be a balance, and there has to be accountability. You have to face consequences for committing crimes. And right now, there is no consequence. And I know I've spoken to the minister about it, and this will go back to your first comment, which is, you'd like to see us work this way in the House. I lead by example. in the House, Minister Musa could tell you, I support what I believe in, and if I disagree respectfully. And on the matter of crime, I have deliberately not used that as a political volley. I have refused to attack the minister in the House or publicly when it comes to crime, because crime is not a political problem. That is a societal problem, and it doesn't matter which administration is there. That problem will be there, and so we need to come together to solve that. I don't want these kids to be killing each other, so Kareem could look bad, and the UDP could get elected. Heaven forbid. You know, the first meeting of the House that we had, I made it clear. I want this administration to succeed and to do everything that they promised the people that they would. And where they don't do that, I will point it out respectfully. Where I could help them to do that, I will volunteer. And in 4 years, when we go back to the polls, I will be able to say to the people that I tried, I worked, and the people will be able to say what was done and what wasn't, and they'll make their decision. I don't believe in this hate politics, as the mayor said, this politics where you have to demonize your opponent in order to uplift yourself. I believe let your delivery speak for itself. You don't have to focus on your opponent. We don't have to focus on each other. We need to focus on the people. So as far as what you've said, I have done my best. They've called me, what your colleague called me, jail, but all kind of things at the House. And I have refused to get into the mud with the pigs. And I conduct myself with a level of decorum, because that type of violent behavior that you see in the House sometimes, what does that say to the gang leaders on George Street or in Westmoreland or in Majestic Alley or Bacalands? If the elected representatives are behaving in such a fashion that is violent and you know, belligerent, what does that say to our people? So it's a terrible example to set for our children. A woman that I met yesterday from San Ignacio, she says she don't even why picnic watch no House meeting. She embarrassed to make her children to see how some of the members of the House behave. So certainly, while I was leader of the opposition, I made sure to lead in a way that was of decorum, of dignity, and as the member from Mesopotamia, I will continue to conduct myself in that way. And the crime issue, as I said, it is something that I hope that the Minister of Police, the Attorney General, they can all get together and find a way to strengthen the laws so that there can be accountability, because if I know I can get away with something, I will continue to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Two things that I will add in relation to the point on the securing convictions. One of the biggest indicators of a successful conviction in the criminal side is the speed at which the trial takes. I have been a defense attorney. I've done a few defense cases. One of the last cases that I did, the trial was 9 years after the incident, and two of the main witnesses for the prosecution had died. So there are practical challenges which we need to overcome, and I think this is why I prefaced one of the earlier questions on this idea of reform. I think a lot of improvement can be done if we focus on capacitating the people at the implementation level, ensuring that investigators are well trained, they're able to write comprehensive reports, they're able to follow processes and gather evidence in a way that would ensure its admissibility in court, that we ensure that the judiciary is well equipped and well resourced to have a quick trial. Because if trials take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, you're not going to get a conviction. And you would be surprised that witnesses forget, witnesses move away, witnesses die, and so you may have a good case which falls apart because of this sole question of delay. And I think if we focus on that, you'll see that there will be a major improvement in the conviction rates in Belize. And a lot of attention also has to be placed on giving the police the adequate resources, including adequate financial resources, staffing resources, to make sure that there's a proper investigation. The final point that I want to add on this issue is, and I know that the government has introduced policies with respect to this, we need to have conversations on policing overall in Belize, because it cuts both ways. And the Honorable Barrow mentioned this. We cannot continue to live in a police state. So we who sit here live very good and we talk about the police, but there's a lot of people in our society who live on the other end of that. And I think there has to be a balance in relation to how our society is being policed. Both administrations did this policy which I spoke against, which is preventative detention. That's very dangerous. You cannot lock up an individual for extended periods of time beyond what is constitutionally prohibited. We're not dealing with animals. We're dealing with human beings. And I think a lot of the conversations about crime in Belize have to be about how do we deal with human beings in a humane way. We recently had conversations which were very emotional about two police shootings. And I'm mindful of the fact that one of those shootings occurred from mass incident. Remember, somebody lost their life over a mask. I mean, so we have to have conversations about police reform and the use of force. I know this is something that they struggle with in the United States as well, but there has to be a balance. We need an efficient and effective enforcement mechanism, but we also have to ensure that we have a professional police department that deals with people with decorum and respects their human rights. And I think in a system where we have that degree of balance, you will see that it works better for everybody, for victims of crime, and it holds perpetrators of crime accountable.
I just want to add one thing before you kick us out. Also, I know that you were looking at it, Minister Musa, but certainly corruption in the police department is something that needs to be addressed. While all of our security forces are not corrupt, the ones that are need to be held accountable, because when you talk about processing that crime scene, if the crime scene is compromised, then when the case file gets to the DPP, you won't have a conviction. So we will never get to the point of convictions if the crime scenes aren't processed with integrity. And I would also like to call on the legal fraternity to work with the police department to train, to do better training. So rather than getting the people that are committing these murders off, you guys need for the sake of our society, need to get with the police department, need to get with the DPP to strengthen those prosecutors there so that we could have accountability, because it all is interrelated. Tourism, investment, the economy will all suffer where citizen security is not at its best. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. I will wrap up first then, because I do have to.
It's really important. I can't tell you two things. These guys, heard it before, and I have you guys there. First thing, a camera, live camera, no lying. So when we in the house and things they go crazy and some bad road one fly, the whole world they watch. The second comment, Mr. Rhea, we got a lot of talent, and just now tap to it. How we get back into my Rasta? If you need me, Mr. Another you grab me and say, Dr. Williams, Konong and Konongia, and when I Konong, and I want to talk to you people. It's 2 weeks, because I do it voluntarily. I go make my own development, but I'm more than willing to come in and help any one of you guys, any part of the country,
So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that passion that Dr. Williams have is a passion that a lot of Belizeans have. We don't care about PUP, UDP division. We really care about the development, nation building, as they say, is for giants. And you guys are young. People love you guys individually. And people see a lot of potential, and that's just to be honest. One of the things I want to say thank you, because I know this isn't norm, and that maybe you went against some of the norm of even presenting yourself here, and I think that's why it's revolutionary that you guys took the interest to meet with us. I have to give special thank you to the Honorable Karim Musa, who took a chance with the diaspora for the ICJ. I have to thank Honorable Shine Barrow. He has been a big diaspora supporter, along with the Honorable Darrell Bradley. And I want to say Hubert Pipersburg, because of the support of the mayor, was able to create this diaspora. He's not here. Every time I talk about him, I get cold seeds, but he's not here. But his impact, he's the one who created this environment for it to even happen. So here we are today. I'm emotional about it. I do want to thank the Belizean American Chamber of Commerce, because they facilitated this room for us. I want to thank Belmex Construction. If you're in California, they do construction. They help sponsor this event. And of course, the Belize, gosh, I can't even remember the name of our own Civic Fellowship Academy, which, by the way, we're actually formalizing, because this is the idea that we want to bring more leaders to the forefront so that we can talk to our Belizean people in a manner like this, educate them that governance has more to do with collaboration and partnerships, public-private partnerships. And of course, Verlene Pitts for helping with this. And of course, DJ Special. He is... So thank you for even attending and being part of this, and and minding your business for collaborating with it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Aria. I just want to say that we asked them for an hour of their time, and we have gone well beyond that. Yesterday was 2 hours or so at the Belize Investment Forum, and that just goes to show that this new crop of young leaders in Belize is very inspiring. It's very inspiring, and it's very encouraging to Belizeans everywhere. Your answers have been thorough, introspective, fantastic, and I think that's very, very encouraging for everyone. And so I would just really sincerely like to thank you for showing up and really showing up for the people here. So let's give them another round of applause. Seeing everyone together like this, and as Aria said, in the diaspora, we don't care about red or blue. We care about Belize. We want to improve Belize. And that should be the sentiment everywhere. So thank you very much. And I feel that the tides are changing in Belize, and we feel that change. We feel it everywhere. The buzz is in the air. So thank you. Sincerely, sincerely, thank you for showing up. I would like to say thank you to Aria, DJ Special, Belize American Chamber, and my radio show, Minding Your Business on Glue FM. I always say, because I'm an entrepreneur and I advocate for entrepreneurship, that success comes when you're minding your business. Thank you, guys.